Skywalker. Ladies and gentlemen, I have CBS News, USA Today, all right here, saying military on the streets of America, arresting citizens forever. It's national news, and they're saying, no, Alex Jones and Ron Paul are insane. And we're going to come back with the internet censorship bill in your face, the inventors of the internet, and I don't mean Al Gore going public saying it's a total takeover, all of it. All right, here is what we're going to do.
What do you mean
I am going to cover the open announcement that the worldwide, the UN, along with the federal government in the U.S., is going to openly start censoring the internet. We're going to break that down, and we're going to get into the National Defense Authorization Act that Obama has said that he will sign after saying he wouldn't sign it. And, of course, it's now come out from all of the co-sponsors and authors, Carl Levin, John McCain, Lindsey Graham, all U.S. senators. The clips are up at Infowars.com. Drudge Report had it linked front page for 2 days. Millions of people watch the videos of them all saying Obama told us to add the provision to have military on the streets of America and to secretly arrest citizens and to have citizens disappear. Meanwhile, the ACLU was running around saying Obama was against it. I was telling you 3 weeks ago, no, here is the letters from Obama's lawyers saying he doesn't particularly like the bill because he already has the power without Congress. Remember, he launched wars without Congress. So at the end of the day, though, he said he's going to sign it because, well, if you want to go ahead and give me dictatorial powers and say I have them, which is what the bill says. It says the president can kill any citizen he wants, do anything, is the Fuhrer. Now, I want to be clear about this. Just because the president says that he's God, just because the Congress says he's our Fuhrer, that means our leader, just because the North Koreans call Kim Jong-il dear leader, dear Fuhrer, doesn't mean that he's above the law. Doesn't mean he's not a degenerate criminal protected by an armed gang called the North Korean military. Now, Obama himself is a puppet, a teleprompter reading puppet, but the office of the presidency and the foreign banking interests that bankrolled him and others, and they're bankrolling Mitt Romney and Newt Gingrich, and demonizing Ron Paul, and brainwashing the public that Ron Paul can't win, even though in some polls he's #1 in Iowa and New Hampshire. Just because their puppet is being endowed now with these false powers doesn't mean they're constitutional. What, 180 years ago or so, the Supreme Court ruled black people weren't humans. And folks didn't like that. So a later ruling, they said, well, okay, they're 2/3 human. Now, they had laws where if a black man didn't pull a plow right, you could kill him. Now, does the black man have a right 200 years ago in a sugarcane field in Cuba or in Alabama to grab the bullwhip away and beat his would-be master over the head with it? Yes, organic, galactic, common law, organic law, universal law says yes. Just because the Nazis had laws saying Hitler could kill anybody he wanted to, and they could come to your house and arrest you and disappear you, doesn't mean that it's legitimate. You see, we had a rule of law, a Bill of Rights and Constitution that said that it wasn't just your right, it was your duty, Declaration of Independence, to physically attack anyone who tried to take your life or liberty. And government was so afraid of the population for hundreds of years in this country that despite the fact that we weren't perfect, we were the freest nation ever known and produced the most wealth. Mexico has triple the natural resources on average, according to CIA Fact Book and other prospectus, than the United States, but can't produce 1/10 the wealth. Why? Because there's no freedom. There's a tiny elite. Same thing with all these other countries. But now you notice as the liberties are gotten rid of, the prosperity's going out the window. Let me ask you, how do you like the fruits of the New World Order, of NAFTA, of GATT, of globalism, of the TSA, of the everything changed after 9/11? And all the bull of buying into that official story. I mean, even if you believe 9/11 was as they said it was, they certainly use it to take the general public's rights. to launch illegal wars, to lie about WMDs, to bankrupt the country. The United States is run by corporate interests that are anti-free market, use government to shut down their competition, and who are anti-family and anti-independence on every front, and openly fund the environmental land grabbers, the carbon taxers, all of it. Go look at who funds it. Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, Bank of America, Wells Fargo. They're all the ones that fund middle-class tax increases to funnel your money and banker bailouts to them. They are the enemy. There is no America anymore. We're a corporate fiefdom. We're a corporate holding. We were conquered through fraud, but they can only hold it as long as you're not aware of it for a time. But they're doing all of this now, saying, yeah, we're going to censor the internet, no due process, shut down whatever we want, AP, Reuters, Newsweek, Time Magazine, Wikipedia, all of them admitting it right now. Wikipedia is going to go dark, they're saying, for a few days, just to show you what it's going to be like. The feds are already grabbing thousands of websites a week, some of them totally legal, that are posting alternative music with authorization that's kicking the mainline recording industry's butt so they don't have a monopoly on what becomes popular. So they had the feds just go shut down a multi-million-dollar website, and the feds had to admit last week, oh, the site wasn't even illegal, but your site's still gone. This is all enshrined in part of a UN treaty that nexuses in with this U.S. law. Our law is all under UN now. As Obama has said, as 4 of the Supreme Court justices have said, it can happen here. It is happening here. So for 3 weeks, we have a debate about, does the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, get rid of posse comitatus, put troops on the streets, allow them to attack anybody anywhere in the world, including U.S. citizens in the United States, kill you, torture you, disappear you. And at first, people couldn't believe it. So they said it can't be true. I saw articles, Ron Paul's wrong. Alex Jones is wrong, all over the country. It can't be true because one subsection said citizens are exempt until another section said unless the government says so. Until Carl Levin and all these other senators, and there's video after video on Infowars.com breaking this down, came out and said, no, it does affect U.S. citizens. Here's the article that we reposted today on the front page that has a boil down of all this. Presidential frontrunner warns martial law being established in America. It's got all the videos, the Ron Paul interview here, where he said the NDAA establishes martial law. Of course it does. It's beyond martial law. Even under classical martial law, the military can't kill you, torture you, or disappear you forever. This is now codified in an abomination that actually has the rest of the world marveling. They are marveling in Australia, in France. Al Jazeera, Drudge had the headline, even Al Jazeera asked, how did it come to this? Because, and let me add something. They always talk about Al-Qaeda. When you get the actual training manuals that law enforcement have sent us, MIAC, Homeland Security, that have made national news over and over again, what's the #1 threat? If you're a new listener, just type in internal Homeland Security documents. Veterans' #1 threat. Veterans, gun owners, ranchers, farmers, self-sufficient, Amish, Mennonites, anybody who, when they bring in the controlled depression to bring us to our knees, who can be self-sufficient. Anybody. You are the people on the list. The people with guns. And they've got Northcom. I'm getting chills right now. And the military and all these manuals training to take us on militarily because we're the real Americans. We're not the terrorists.
I went numb when I learned.
Yeah, America has gone numb to corruption to the point of, on BBC, Fox News, ABC News, I've played all the clips here. You can just type into a search engine, news admits troops growing opium. They go, yeah, we're ordered to grow the opium, and then it's shipped out of the country. We don't know where it goes. It's just gone up 13-fold from what it was 10 years ago when the liberation began. $500 billion a year of heroin refined out of it and shipped worldwide. America is run by corrupt interest. 2 megabanks got caught last December, a year ago now, laundering $376 billion in narcotics money. Out of the $500 billion a year industry, again, just here in the U.S., it's $500 billion in opium worldwide. Our own government says the government has been taken over by criminals. This is what happens over and over again. But here's the good news. They wouldn't be coming out and openly saying, okay, we are going to start shutting down talk radio and bring back the fairness doctrine. Okay, we are going to not let people criticize the government. Okay, we are going to turn the Pentagon loose and the private mercenary companies, over 200 of them hired, to wage offensive internet war on detractors of our agenda. That means if you're not a globalist traitor. The reason we get hack attacks all the time out of Department of Defense and all sorts of dirty tricks. The reason that happens is because they're scared to death. Because 74% of all donations from the military for both parties, for presidential candidates, go to Ron Paul. Because the military loves my radio show. Because they're average men and women who join for the right reasons, and they know what I'm saying is the truth, because they're in there getting the training for riot control and gun confiscation. And they're good people, and they know what's going on. And so you bet they're in Newsweek and Time Magazine and The Hill, all over the news admitting, oh yeah, the government's getting ready to shut down free speech. Why? Because we're destroying them. We're defeating the small criminal group. Like John Corzine, former head of Goldman Sachs, that's the head of the New World Order, sets up his own MF Global, makes a 40-to-1 bet. Goldman Sachs is told by its owner, because it was just basically a front group again for J.P. Morgan and then a subsidiary of that, MF Global, you give us that money. It disappears out of the private customer accounts. And Corzine now last week in Congress got caught when the head of the biggest commodity trading group, the CMT, went public. We played the clip. Financial Times of London ran with it as well and said Corzine did know and did direct the private accounts to be taken. After he'd perjured himself before 2 committees, he's at the highest level of government, top Obama advisor, former New Jersey governor, former head of Goldman Sachs. That's as high level as it gets. And he's a common crook. He's a common crook, just like Bernie Madoff, who founded the NASDAQ. Ken Lay, who came up with carbon taxes and all this stuff with Al Gore in meetings. A common crook. They're crooks. And when you go study who's funding the Ford Foundation, who's funding Rand Corporation, who's putting out these reports, it's those very same companies. They're the ones lobbying and giving money to pass NDAA. Of course, foreign crook banks want the army on the streets. What do you think they do? It came out in 2002 when the BBC, Greg Palast, got the IMF World Bank documents when Joseph Stiglitz left. 2,000-plus pages. And they talked about, well, first we take over and buy off both parties or all 3 parties in a third world country or a first world country or an old world country. And then we implode the economy and then people get mad. And once there's a revolution, we try to bring in martial law and that further destroys things. And they've got a plan for us. And there's no reason it has to happen. Ron Paul being number 1, number 2, or number 3 in all polls combined. So he's really in second place, as I've been telling you for 6 months. The media now admits that. The fact that he is in second place, despite all the demonization and everything else, shows you it is a bellwether or a barometer or a gauge, like in your car. But the temperature is rising of the people. This is a guy who understands it, who does the real research. Weekly Standard says he sounds just like Alex Jones. Of course he does. He's reading the same globalist documents. I can't tell you how refreshing it is to have a Lord Monckton on or a Ron Paul on or someone who's a true scholar like I am, who spends countless hours studying, and I can say something and they finish my sentence. Up-to-date info. People who know what they're talking about. So again, I'm going to warn everybody right now. We are at a historic crossroads. Remember, just 3 weeks ago, oh, it's